Okay, dust and misery, polar miseria. Recognition is the topic today. This idea of recognition, one as someone who is not even recognizing God or a need for recognition, and someone who recognizes because they have already recognized, as the prodigal son, that they are void and tired and helpless. And I think there are multiple scenarios where we have this idea that Yeshua, Messiah, God manifest in a body, in a human body, but perfect, without sin, reaches down to us. God comes down to us, which is the separation of so much when we look at ideas of God. Recognition can be clear as a bell, but it hurts, especially when we're already walking and the bell rings to show us we need to recognize more. And the bell is ringing. Hello? We need to recognize that every day is a struggle, and that this idea of Yeshua coming to us and the gift of salvation that he presents us and the grace that he gives us through that gift, like the prodigal son, there needs to be recognition so the prodigal son can go home. And when the father sees the son coming, the father runs to the son and comes to him. But without recognition, and I think it's a daily, what we talk about here in this ministry is every day we're recognizing, which we call the proper judgment that we're making thanks to the Holy Spirit, thanks to Yeshua's power over death in us, that we are in a constant recognition that the sin that he won over, that he took from us in a judicial way before the laws of God, taking away that condemnation that the sin convicts us, but it's still warring on the inside of us in the old man or the old woman or the old creature we call the monster, the one that's jealous, the one that lies, the one that's temperamental, the one that's emotional, the one that's always right, the one that is covet, the one that loves fornication, the one that loves to eat and take, and it's me, the one that wants to be on the throne of our lives, that has been controlling us until Yeshua liberated us, the one that is still there inside us, convicting us too, trying to put guilt, and Yeshua's helping us to have victory over that. Can we have victory just in the idea that we're in grace, or is there a daily struggle that we need to learn how to overcome and submit the old creature? Recognition.
Yes, Ernie, yes. Recognition is the most difficult thing for human beings. I mean, we are not able to recognize what we have to recognize.
We're good at justifying.
Yes, just in that case. But let's speak about what we have to recognize, to accept in front of God, because this is the main point. And there are two things that we have to recognize. Basically, those two things we have to analyze and to speak what it means to recognize. The first thing is our misery, our dust and our misery, which is the name of this ministry, dust and misery. We have to recognize that we are dust and misery, ignorant, mortal people, nothing. Dust in the wind, as the song says. That thing to recognize is very, very hard. And there is nothing in front of the other thing, the second point that we have to recognize. But the good news is that both things that we have to recognize, those two things that we have to recognize, we can do it because the Holy Spirit, Yeshua, God, help us to recognize these things. The second thing that we have to recognize is our evil, or the evil that is inside of us. In a biblical language, we have to recognize the sin. But if we recognize the sin, we have to understand at the same time that we have to recognize our guilt. Because if we speak about sin, we are speaking about guilt. So people can ask or can say, guilt for what? Or which law condemns the sin?
Yeah. What did I do? Who were you to condemn? Yeah. Well, that's a big argument.
The problem is that people don't know that there is a law. The law who God gave to his servant Moses. That law, which is the law of God, it doesn't matter if there are people who believe in this or not believe in this. The truth is the truth. That law condemns the sins, condemns the sinners. That's why the Messiah came, to fulfill the law, to take out the guilt, to take out the condemnation, the curse, and to give us freedom in a legal way, but also the freedom in relation with the sin, because the sin is inside of us. No matter if we born again, the sin is inside of us, still inside of us. The difference is that we have the Holy Spirit to overcome the old creature, the sin, to submit. But the first thing is to recognize and to confess, because many people can recognize, but they don't confess. It's very important to confess in front of God.
And that also is God's work.
Everything. It's God's grace. Everything. To recognize, to confess, and to submit the old creature, all is his job, all is his work. But the beginning of the freedom is to recognize and to confess. It's important, that point, because God wants to hear our confession. If you want to be free. If you don't want to be free, just stay where you are. But you are a slave.
And it's a daily walk. It's part of pick up your cross and follow me. I think there's a lot of talk about grace and God comes to us. It's a lot of talk of that. And amazing, yeah. I couldn't agree more. But I've been there where I've stood in so much grace where I could not win the daily battle. Though I could remind myself and convince myself and justify myself in God's grace, I'm okay, which He is, but it's that daily growth and sanctification, edification, that's a process that's happening that comes with our recognizing that we fall short. And many will connect that to a depressing life, that you're in the negative. When you're recognizing when we can be free in the positive, and here we're saying there's grace, but there's this artificial grace that many have preached. Many have preached this pure grace and this idea that we need to live in that to actually be in it. But we have to ask ourselves the same question that I asked myself for years and struggled with and wrote about in songs and writings, and I could be honest, there was no rest because there was still something bothering me because deep down there was still a struggle daily going on, which is the sin still warring against us, and we want to push that down to have peace, and God helps us to push that down when we recognize daily and confess daily. They go hand in hand. But this idea in this capsule is to recognize, and sometimes we recognize and we don't confess, and it takes a little longer for us to come to confess that. Sometimes we don't fix it in one day. Sometimes God's working on us for years so we can finally see it and confess it, because I think recognition alone is one part, but the prodigal son, I think he knew what I get from the story is I think that when things got bad, he recognized, oh, I'm in trouble here. Oh, this is a problem. But there was that moment when he was eating the pods with the pigs that he said, you know what, I might as well get up and go and just become a servant, and I'll live better. But he knew, and he actually got up. And that was the Holy Spirit working in him, yes, but he also did his part, no? To recognize and get up. And he got up. But God helped him get up, I'm sure, and he got home.
Yes, Ernie,
and he confessed to his father.
He confessed, yes, and he received the freedom, the Holy Spirit. And only the truth can make us free. That is written in John 8. We have to recognize the reality, the truth. We cannot still lying to ourselves, that thinking that we are righteous people or good people or holy people. We are not good people, because the sin don't let us be good. And also, that point, we have guilt. And if you want to be free of that guilt, the way is not the psychologist or psychiatrist. It's not the religion, it's God. It's the blood of Jesus. And if you don't want to be free, stay where you are. Nobody can force you, not even God. So we don't make a favor to Yeshua if we recognize. The favor is for us. Many people think that if we go with God, God is God, man. If we make sin, God is God. If we make good things, God is God. We don't make any favor to God. So if you want to be free, start to recognize what we are, and you will receive the Holy Spirit, and then you will have to recognize these things for the rest of your life if you want to live in judgment and in grace, which is the same. The real grace includes the judgment to the whole creature.
Dust and misery.